2-minute warning. Hey, it is 6 o'clock. We're going to call this meeting to order. And we're going to begin with the land acknowledgement. We would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional and unceded territory of the Algonquin Nation. And would you please stand for the national anthem? Supposed to sing? Okay, our first motion is moved by Duncan McGregor, seconded by Lynn Clegus, that the agenda for the regular meeting of council held November the 14th, 2023 be approved as, are there amendments, Kathy?
Yes, there are, Madam Mayor. There's an addition under number 19, the closed session. We have one more, so that would be number 5, and it's on position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instructions to be applied to any negotiations on or to be carried on behalf of the municipality or local board. That's it, Madam Mayor.
Okay, so approving the agenda as amended. All those in favor? Carried. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest in general nature thereof of any item on tonight's agenda by any member of council? Seeing none, we'll note that in the minutes. Motion moved by Lynn and seconded by Duncan that the minutes from the regular meeting of council held on October the 24th, 2023 be approved as amended. There were some amendments.
Yes, there was a number, I think it was number 9A. The resolution was changed, the wording from proper to prior.
Okay. Any discussion or comments? All those in favor? Carried. Okay, mayor's remarks. First of all, I want to congratulate all of the rec committees on all of the work that's being done on rinks and buildings and all of the volunteers in all of our communities. It's huge, the people who have come out to help. District 2, the posts that I see on Facebook of getting the rink boards up. District 4 with getting the boards up there. District 2 with the roof, and what Kennebec has done in District 1. It's phenomenal, the work that's been done and the dollars that's been saved by these volunteers. So congratulations one and all, and thank you to everybody who's put their many, many hours in to help out. We also have with us tonight Steve Gould, who is receiving a certificate of supervisor certification. Steve, I want you to come up. We have a little plaque for you. This is the little plaque, Steve. And this is Steve's certificate, and I'll just read you parts of it here. Certified road supervisor, and the initial CRS or CRS1 or CRSS, with all its rights, privileges, and responsibilities in the province of Ontario. Congratulations, Steve.
Thank you.
There we go. Well, and this is the code of ethics, and I just want to read what the code of ethics is. Regard their duty to the public as their prime responsibility. Endeavor at all times to enhance the public regard for their profession and discourage untrue, unfair, or exaggerated statements. Not divulge information given in confidence or make unsubstantiated statements. Not become involved with any vendor, supplier, or contractor in a way that would be considered a conflict, and refrain from participating in the election of members for public office in the municipal government that employs them, other than going to vote.
That's right. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Congratulations. And also, Miss Jody League Deputy Clerk has also successfully completed Unit 1 of the Municipal Administration Program. Congratulations, Jody. Keep up the good work. It's great when our employees take extra training because we benefit from it. So thank you for the hours of work that your folks are putting in. Santa Claus parades are coming up, but we're going to talk about them next meeting. So we've got the dates all fresh in our minds, and we can talk about who's going to get there. Hopefully all of us, but we'll see. I think that's all I have. Does anybody else have anything to add? Anything, Deputy Mayor? No? All right. So we'll move on then. Thank you. Delegations. We're going to start with our update on the Emergency Management Program and Emergency Response Plan with Terry Gervais from Lumix. Terry, welcome. Chris is going to help you out.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Council, and thank you as always for the opportunity to spend a few minutes with you tonight in your busy agenda. What we want to do tonight is just talk a little bit about your updated, the recommendation for your updating of your emergency response plan. And at the end of the presentation, I have a little bit on the audits that we did in both the primary and the secondary emergency operations center. Next slide, please. So the township contracted the Lumix Group to look at updating the emergency response plan to the incident management system model. So the model is a recognized model across the province of Ontario, been around since after the tragedies that happened in September 11th. And by bringing this part of the plan up to the incident management model for this municipality, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit as we move through, but it's going to also help this municipality when there is an emergency to get support from other agencies, outside agencies, or other municipalities. So the township CAO and the senior leadership team and the fire service personnel all provided recommendations into this project, and the contributions helped in the development of the new emergency response plan. The training and the exercise with the control group was held on October the 27th. So if council passes this tonight, your emergency response plan can go into fruition. So next slide, please. So like I said, the new plan is now based on the province's incident management model. It's a function-based model. And when you're going to look, you're going to see the kind of the organizational functional chart here in a second. And one of the first things we do when we put that up, people say, we don't have that many people in the municipality to be able to fill all these boxes. But this truly is a function-based, and it allows the CAO to fill the boxes or share the boxes, if you will, based on the type of emergency. And if you can't fill the boxes and you need to require them filled, you can now reach out to other outside agencies, other municipalities that can help you, because you're now on a very similar system. So each member of the emergency control group has a function to perform, and that's a really key part, is to remember its functions, and the positions they have are defined in the roles and responsibility within the plan. Depending on the type of the emergency, like I said, the CAO, now will be the EOC manager. When you have an emergency in your municipality, they can expand or they can contract the size of the control group depending on the requirement of the emergency. So depending on the size and the complexity of the emergency, the staff can then go and assume their regular roles and responsibilities. If the EOC manager only needs 3 or 4 people in the control group, then everybody else can go back and keep the municipality up and running. Next slide, please. So this is just the function. So as you can see, there's the EOC manager at the top, the head of council, and a scribe to do documentation. And then there's a general staff and a command staff, and those functions, those other 7 functions that are within the plan. Next slide, please. The new ERP also allows for a smaller municipal control group. However, the new ERP structure enables the EOC manager to request assistance or additional resources based on the emergency. So what we recommend and what we've worked with in the training is if you have to activate your emergency operations center, it starts with your team. So the CAO's team comes in with the head of council and a scribe and starts and looks at the initial emergency. So what type of emergency you have? What functions do we have to fill? Do we need any outside agencies to come in and help us, or can we handle it with what we have? The township can receive the support from other municipalities, like I talked about, if it is a long-term event. So if you start going into that over the 24 to 48 hours, you need to start relieving the emergency control group. So now you can start doing that by using other municipalities. Your external stakeholders, like your paramedic services and your OPP, have been using the IMS model for years. Next slide, please. So under the roles and responsibilities, the council and staff have assigned and defined roles. So as noted earlier, all positions have defined roles and responsibilities. So the ERP emergency response structure is based in 3 levels. There's the policy level, the policy decisions, and that's where the mayor and council comes in. And the strategic decisions, that's where the control group comes in. And the tactical decisions, that's for the people that are at the site actually managing with the emergency. The 3 levels continue to communicate together. The 3 levels support each other, but they don't do each other's roles. So basically the idea is there's an emergency in your municipality, the site or the responders will go and start managing it. The EOC or the control group will support the site people, and then the head of council and council will then support the control group. No level will make the decisions for or perform the duties of another level. Next slide, please. So I just want to talk about a couple of the roles and responsibilities for the head of council and council. And we did talk about this earlier in the training sessions that we did. So the head of council has very defined roles in the incident management system. Their role under the act as well is to declare and terminate an emergency based on the recommendations of the control group. But it's really the mayor or the head of council, whoever is sitting in that room, it's their determination to declare. Their role is also to communicate with council and keep all the councillors informed of the status of the emergency. Their role is also to communicate with the appropriate regional, provincial, and federal levels, as well as any other municipal councils. Their role is also to act as the spokesperson for the Township of Central Frontenac and to call and convene any council meetings. So basically, the head of council's role, one of their big roles, is to keep the rest of council informed and vice versa. So as there's issues going on in your wards, your role is to get that through to the head of council, who could then bring it to the control group to discuss. So council, next slide, please. So council, again, also has a very distinct role under the IMS structure. They're to also, they can terminate the emergency. They can't declare the emergency, but they can terminate the emergency based on the recommendations of the control group. They should attend all council meetings, any emergency council meetings, sorry. Advocate for the needs of their community during the emergency. Provide support and comfort of all residents affected in the emergency, and ensure communications between council and the community are open and maintained during any emergency. So that's just a kind of a brief highlight of the plan. You have a copy of the plan. The plan is broken down into two parts. There's the emergency response plan itself, which is a policy document that we're bringing forward for council's consideration and adoption. And then there's an annex section, and the annex section is a working document for the staff or for the control group. It contains phone numbers and forms, and it's something that we can be changed on a regular basis because it is more operational. The emergency response plan, if there's any major changes to it, would come back to council. The way it's structured, there really shouldn't be any need to be coming back on a regular basis to council. What should come to council every year is the update of your compliance and any meeting, any discussions that come out of the program committee meetings. So part of the scope of the project was also do an audit on the two emergency operations centers, so that it gives council an idea of where you're at today with your centers and where you should go maybe into the future. What kind of systems that should go into the emergency operations centers in order so you can maintain the service for not just a few hours, but for a long term. So next slide, please. So the Emergency Operations Center is a facility that the community's control group meets to coordinate response and recovery operations during any incident or a potential incident. One of the things that we did with the training, both the earlier in the spring and this training, is we really talked to the control group about talking about prior to an emergency. Don't wait till the emergency happens. If you know there's going to be a long-term event that's going to hit your community in the way of an ice storm or a snow event, before it happens, talk and make sure you're prepared, make sure everything's all ready. So this plan, both the plan and the centers, we want to make sure that's not just for when the response piece happens. Next slide, please. So I talked about, as part of that, the contract, we were tasked with looking at both the primary and the secondaries. The goal of the audit was to assess the accuracy and the readiness. And the final report that was provided to the CMC summarized the result of the audits and recommendations. And I'd like to just highlight a few of the audits and recommendations. Next slide, please. So all EOCs must provide a control group with space, technology, and communication systems they need to organize, communicate, and perform response and recovery operations. So remember, the control group's job is not just during the response. Their job is to make sure that this community gets back up and running in the recovery phase. So that in order to do that, they need to be able to go longer term. The EOC must be available at a moment's notice and should be ready to operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week if required. Next slide, please. So we looked at your primary emergency operations center, and the report has a few more highlights, but these are the kind of the high level ones. So the primary EOC is located at your fire station number 3. So some of the recommendations is to ensure that the primary EOC has adequate amounts of office supplies such as paper, dry erasers, and brushes. Remember, when an emergency happens, we don't necessarily have that time to go around and gather all those supplies because it's going to be Saturday night at 2:00 in the morning on a long weekend. That's when it's going to be. So you want to make sure that you have those supplies available to the control group, at least enough to get started and carry them through for the first couple of days. Ensure that all members of the control group have key fobs to access the primary EOC. It's a little thing, but it gets missed. And in a lot of municipalities is make sure that the people that need to get into the facility have access to that facility. Ensure that the primary EOC's kitchen is stocked with essentials such as water, coffee, and snacks. So again, you're not talking about necessarily for that week or 10 days, those first couple of days to have something there, at least to be able to start as you're working through in the first 24 to 48 hours. And the last bullet is to install a standby generator to ensure the primary EOC can operate 24/7 based on a power outage or if a power outage occurs. Next slide, please. So your alternate EOC is located at your municipal offices. The offices have a little more challenging, than Station 3 because of the lack of a fairly large room. But there is a number of things that can be done for the office that can make it a very viable alternate. One thing that should be considered is getting mobile whiteboards or TV or a mobile TV for the control group. So as you have different areas whether you're going to use somebody's office or you're going to use the kitchen space, you can wheel in kind of the TV or a whiteboard into that space. One thing that the station has that the alternate doesn't have is a base station that can listen or talk to the site, to the fire operations. So we would recommend installing a base radio in the alternate EOC. So the operations section, so that's the group that can talk to the site manager. The next bullet down is talking about shower facilities. So one thing that the alternate doesn't have is a shower facility for the control group, and not necessarily is that a viable option for the municipal office, and that's something that.
Terry, we do have one downstairs.
Oh, okay. Okay.
It's small. Is that what you're saying? It's water. It's a shower. It doesn't have to be big to get you clean.
Okay. So we should review the shower that's at the municipal office. But if it's not viable, one of the things that should be built into your policies or in the annex section is a procedure for allowing control group members to get away from the office to have a shower, to get a break. So that's something that can be done. And then, of course, the last one is to install standby generator. So again, you can operate 24/7 despite if there's a power outage. Next slide, please. So one of the things we talked about for the alternate, if the township doesn't have the resources or it's not cost effective to do some of the options that we talked about, you might want to consider moving your alternate EOC to another municipal building. If the township pursues this option, it must ensure that it moves the alternate EOC to a building that has a generator, kitchen, and shower supplies. The next recommendation or consideration that we're saying, but not recommendations. The township can contact one of the neighboring municipalities to discuss sharing an EOC facilities if Central Frontennac's EOCs become unavailable during an emergency. If all parties agree to this arrangement, they must formalize the agreement and make it official and approved by council. So one of the things that you might want to consider is if your EOCs are in an area that maybe have to be evacuated, could you go to one of your neighboring municipalities and utilize their EOCs? I do know to the south of you, and I do know to the east of you have good EOCs. So that's something you might want to consider is possibly making an agreement that you may never use, but it might be something that you might have to use if you have to evacuate. Next slide. So we like to say anywhere, anytime. It will happen. It does happen. And we see across our country, we talk about it in our training sessions. If you just watch what's happening in our country alone over the last number of years. So we need to be prepared. And I again applaud the CAO and the CMC, which is the chief, for moving this forward into the IMS model. And all of staff, when we did all our trainings and did her exercising, and has been for a couple of years that I've been involved with your community. They're very engaged. Sometimes we go and municipalities, some of the staff aren't engaged, but your staff are all engaged, and all know that this is an important thing to protect your community. Slide. And with that, Madam Mayor, I'll happy to take any.
Okay. Questions or comments? Nikki?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is actually more for the chief than for Terry, so thank you for your presentation. I know that like a generator was in the budget last year and it didn't go through, but I am also aware that there's a grant available through Ontario right now that closes at the end of November. So some of my question to you is, with some of these recommendations, are you applying for the grant to hopefully cover these so that they're not an addition to the budget?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Gowdy, we've already submitted that request to the province, so it's already gone through. So the maximum you can get is 50,000. So that's what we put in for.
Right. Follow up. What items did you request in the grant, if you don't mind me asking?
Just a standby generator.
Just one?
But that's 50,000 is all you're allowed for. So the generator for the station would be in around the $80,000 mark. So.
Okay, Philip?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The one question I had was the alternate EOC. It's currently the municipal office, but we have 4 fire halls that have a lot of the items that you're asking for, excluding the generator. Would it make sense to, other than having one being the municipal office, having 3 other ones?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Smith. Yes, actually, the CEO and myself would discuss this. The CEO would prefer that it was the municipal office, but at the same time, we certainly have the opportunity to use either the Mountain Grove station or the Parham station. They have all the facilities we need there. So yes, good suggestion. No.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Chris?
Just one comment. So once this is passed for resolution and bylaw, then I can submit it to the province through the portal. So we don't get the nasty note at the end of the year from the province. Yes. So it'd be great if we got that through. Thank you very much.
And one comment I'd like to make as the head of council, typically before in the other system, you wouldn't want to call people together because it was calling so many people together, where now with this system, you can have 3 or 4 people and talk about what's coming and get prepared, where it wasn't as easy before. So this system is much more flexible and more appropriate for our needs. So I think it's going to work really well. Okay, thank you very much, Terry, Chris. And next we have Central Washroom Facility Committee. Oh, we'll do a motion here first. We have a motion moved by Lynn and seconded by Cindy. The council received the presentation from Terry Gervais, Vice President of the Government and Private Services Division, Lumex Group, regarding the update of the Central Frontenac Emergency Management Program and Emergency Response Plan for information. All those in favor? Carried. Now we have Allison, who's going to talk to us about the Central Frontenac Washroom Facilities Committee. And we all have a little printout beside us. Welcome, Allison.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor and Council, for providing us with some time to discuss committee that was established by once I hit that, do I have to?
No, just leave it.
leave it.
Make sure you're speaking right into it.
All right, I will do that. You've all received the package, and it was meant to provide you with an update of a year's work. A committee was struck, a council supported committee, to review the requirement or the desire for a 4-season public washroom to service the park, to service the trail, and to service the public that comes into Sharbot Lake as its supply and service center. And the package was intended to consider design and function and cost. all three being equally important. You will see there are some drawings that are intended mainly to provide you with a design concept. Yeah, it was decided that a new structure was going to be most cost effective, and accessibility and functionality were going to be the key concerns. Accessibility meant it had to be accessible to the trail that was entertaining all kinds of new people coming into the community, walkers, cyclists, cross-country, snowshoeing, and all the motorized ATVs, snowmobiles. Literally thousands of people that are now coming into the community through the trail from all parts of the province. And when they get here, we want them to stop because it's an economic driver should they stop. The trail traverses all of central Frontenac, north, south, east, and west with the two trails. They converge here. For that reason, the county has identified Charlotte Lake as one of 4 trailheads in the county. And when they get here, they stop. They stop for a lot of reasons. We have a restaurant on the trail. We have a hotel on the trail. We have food supply and services, and of course, grocery and all the other things. So they stop. One of the key things that has transpired over the last 10 years is the county has placed high priority on the trail as an economic driver, and our own economic development committee here in Central Frontenac, through research and study, identified that the community felt that a public washroom was a high priority. So the committee was struck, and we started our work from a position of neutral, looking at the facility that was there that for a long time has really been not filling the bill and needing a new facility of one sort, either that building or one that we would build. Through consultations and our own deliberations, we looked at the park and we looked at the accessibility of the trail. The present washroom is sitting below the trail, making it very inaccessible to trail users. Rail system from either side of the park to get to it. So when we looked at costs, we should acknowledge that this was a train established community, and we've had a very active heritage trail committee working in the park. So why not continue the theme? So when you look at the drawing of the facility that we've come up with, it is a train station. It's not the one that was here originally, because that was a bit of a platform and a 1.5-story building that really wouldn't serve a 20 by 20 building, which is just a small facility. But we looked at hundreds of designs, and we came up with one that had some rural uniqueness and would lend itself. So you'll see the design focus, and you'll see the location focus. The location is important. It has to serve the trail. There's probably funding options for us because the trail now serves all the way from Kingston to Calabogie with not one public washroom. So we believe we can look at partnering with other organizations when we look at how do we fund it. So the corner is next to the medical center, tucked in the corner. The old building would have to be either demolished so we don't have a series of little buildings. That's up for discussions with Public Works and obviously council. At this point, we are recommending as a committee three independent washrooms, small washrooms, 10 by 10, large enough to have a family use it and an individual use it. It has a urinal, a toilet, a sink, a bench where you could sit down in a snowmobile suit and get your snowmobile suit off, which women invariably have to do if we're going to use a washroom. It's going to have in-floor heating so that the floor is dry and not slippery. And there's a one unit that faces the trail and 2 that face the park. So you'll be able to get into accessible unit or a regular unit from both the park and the trail in this particular corner. You've had a little chance to look at the drawings. They are certainly still up for discussion with several groups. We'd like to talk to the the Heritage Trail Group, have them look at it, get their comments. There's several users that have indicated interest, several residents. And we felt we should bring our progress report to council first before we went beyond that. Obviously, we want you to see it first. And we're hoping to move into stage two, which is to build a funding formula. As part of our work, we did ask Public Works to put the project in the budget for discussions and consideration. We'd like permission to start looking at ways to find capital money and operating money for the facility. And we obviously can't go ahead and do that without council's blessing. So I thought, without further ado, open it up to some questions, and hopefully I can field them. If not, I have two fellow committee people here that have said they'll be happy to help out in that way.
Okay, excellent. Who would like to start? Lynn.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I was looking through all of the numbers that you have for your pricing.
Right.
And one of the areas I noticed was well and septic, and you were going to hook up the original well and septic, which sounds great. I have a couple questions on that. And one is the washrooms that you're proposing the same capacity as the old septic system
Yes.
had? And I know in the past few years, there have been numerous updates to the building code with that. And I know, for example, in my own home, we had to build an extra large mantle on ours. So does this septic system have that capacity to do that? And I'm assuming that the hookup would be from the opposite end.
Yes.
So is $5,000 enough to do that? And finally, has the Conservation Authority been consulted about the proximity to the water? And with it being a new building, would they have any concerns?
I'm sure they will be part of the process. Answering the last question, Madam Mayor, through you and the council. Public Works has addressed the septic with the authorities for a reconnect, and it is suitable. The well was budgeted last year because there was contemplation of just putting a well with the old building. So that has already previously been budgeted. So it doesn't need to come into this one.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Certainly, you want to go and figure out how to raise money. That certainly perks our ears. That's great to do.
At the end of November.
Oh, say that.
Also, think there, the Trillium grant,
Yes,
there is one opening that with the deadline of November 30th.
that's part of the reason we're here now. We are crowding ourselves a bit because it is a work in progress, this project. And we would like to take advantage. It is it's for capital projects, and we think it would fit beautifully. We also believe there's a lot of trail organizations that would love to see a public washroom on the trail. And county has obviously placed the trail as high priority in all of their work because they believe it is one of the single largest economic drivers for the region. Obviously, for our township, it is.
And it's very seeable on weekends when you look at the volumes of people parked in the community and the trail being used. Philip, you had a comment or question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. One of the things we talked about during budget time was relocating, or not using the well, but taking water from the medical center, I think was part of the discussion we had at budget time as well. But I did want to ask Allison and the committee if they'd considered what the ongoing operating costs were going to be. So
We're already budgeted for 50% of the year. Public Works does have a contract for the maintenance of it half the year. So it would mean that obviously it's another 6 months being tacked on. We haven't done a proper analysis of what that will cost. So we do have to come back with that. When we're doing our funding proposal, it has to include the maintenance costs so that if we move ahead, we haven't left anything out of the picture.
And then the only other question I had, Madam Mayor, was had the committee thought anything to vandalism that's happened there in the past. So
I think some of the suggestions were to put cameras on, but in reality, I think if we involve a lot of different groups, that ownership of this facility, the users are going to see it as something that they own a bit of. The trail groups. We know that there is vandalism. It's always been there. All parks have often suffered from it, but we're hoping that we can encourage the use of it through some kinds of language to the users, that they participate in helping us keep it beautiful. We believe it'll enhance the village. We believe people coming into the village don't like asking business people to use the facilities. And the facilities in the village are not up to standard in terms of being able to handle heavy capacity. Most of them are on holding tanks. You can't expect the restaurants to manage these large numbers of users. So with respect to the water, we have looked at using the system at the medical center because it already has a water purification system on it. And we know that we will have to budget for that in the new building if we don't use it. So that's still under review as a possible. When we get more focused on how we apply the budget and where we get our money from, we'll be able to decide, can we take the water from there? We have to stay 50 feet away from 2 septic systems for a well. So that's a practical problem, but we'll work it out.
Okay. Duncan.
Just for a matter of efficiency, does the washroom committee need council's blessing to apply for a Trillium grant, or can they do that on their own?
No,
It would come through.
it comes through the township. It comes through because I have the authority on the, and the password to getting into the Trillium. So they can help and certainly write the proposal and then we can send it off.
But sorry,
As
what I
part of
meant
the
was,
township.
does it need a motion of council? Should we do that
Yeah.
tonight too?
It's on the resolution.
Okay.
I will read the motion, and if there's more discussion, we can keep going. So this is moved by Duncan McGregor, seconded by Cindy Kelsey. The council received the Central Frontenac Washroom Facilities Committee Progress Report as presented by Allison Robinson, Committee Chair for Information, and further that council are receptive to the Charlotte Lake Beach Washroom Project and requests the Central Frontenac Washroom Facilities Committee to investigating funding opportunities, including Trillium. I'll just add including Trillium. Okay, further discussion. Everybody likes the concept. It looks very nice. It will fit well with the community. Susan. Great excitement. Far away from me.
That's great. I will. Thank you.
Okay, so all those in favor of the motion? Carried. Good work.
Thank you very much.
Go find some money.
That's what we'll work on. Thanks very much.
Okay. All right, next we have a Safe Roads Engineering Report on the Henderson Road by Mark McIntosh, who is the engineer project manager, and I think related to Jim McIntosh. Welcome, Mark.
Nice. Thank you, Madam Mayor and councillors. Appreciate the opportunity to present our findings here this evening on the Henderson Road Bridge. So what we did at Safe Roads Engineering is after a few meetings with Public Works Group and a few site visits, completed some rehabilitation options that we'll discuss here this evening, just to help establish a plan for moving forward to address a few concerns that were identified with the bridge. Just some background information. So the Henderson Road Bridge is a 32.5 meter long, single span concrete deck on concrete precast I-girder bridge, which is a fairly standard bridge that was constructed in 1983. The rehabilitation history is a bit unknown at this site, but the 2021 Bridge Condition Index number was about 73.7, which falls into the fair to good category. So the reason why it was identified for an earlier rehabilitation was due to a couple features, which I'll touch on here momentarily. Keep just the location of the bridge here. So it's just north of Highway 7 by Arden, not far off of the highway. At Kennebec Lake, there is a boat launch just on the southeast corner of the bridge. So I'll just have a few site photos to help describe the existing conditions at the bridge structure itself. As you can see here, that Kennebec Lake does flow below Henderson Road Bridge and is navigable. And as I mentioned, this picture is basically taken from the boat launch in that southeast corner. The next photo here was one of the items identified in the OSUM report, which is the biannual bridge inspection report that are completed on structures, bridge structures. So the expansion joint was covered by the surface treatment under the recent surface treatment operations that were done in that area. That was unintended, but what that does is it impacts the functionality of that expansion joint. So that joint is where the bridge stretches and contracts during the freeze-thaw cycles and the heat of the summer, cold of the winter. So when that's filled with surface treatment, it limits the joint's ability to manage those movements, and it also impacts, there's a little rubber seal in there that gets damaged. So we couldn't see the seal itself because it was covered, but we did see some signs of water leakage in the girder ends, which was leading to some spalling and what you would expect to see in that situation on the concrete girder ends. The other kind of major item that was identified at this site was the condition of the bearings. So it's a little bit challenging to see in the picture, but the bearing is essentially a square rubber. It's an elastomeric laminated bearing is what this type of bearing is called. So there's steel sheets. I think there's 5 or 6 of them in this one that provide some rigidity. And then the bearing is intended to move and compress as trucks go over the bridge. This one we identified on both ends of the bridge. So both in the expansion end and in the fixed end, because these types of structures, they're intended to kind of stay fixed in one end and the expansion occurs at the other end of the structure. Both of them were showing signs of leaning. So some leaning would be expected in the summer months when thermodynamics are pushing the bridge to be longer. But we also observed the same leaning and cracking of those bearings in the winter, showing that this has been a longer term issue. Unknown cause, that it could go all the way back to the time of construction. However, they're at a state of failure given that the cracking is exposing some of the steel sheets within that bearing itself. Next, we just have some photos of the guide rail on the site. Standard of the day was constructed, which is not standard to today's best recommendations. So this is common as things improve, as vehicles get bigger, the standards change, which is always kind of moving the target for us. But the structure connections, current standard is a much stronger connection, which will prevent a vehicle from getting pinched in at the end of the concrete barrier. And then on the ends of these guide rail runs, we have what we call a buried end treatment, which when those are encountered by a vehicle, it tends to launch the vehicle, sort of like Dukes of Hazzard, but not as enjoyable for those involved. Another key feature of the bridge here that we'll touch on in a bit is also the exposed concrete deck. So the original design of the structure that we were able to obtain from the Ministry of Transportation did identify that the 4-inch asphalt overlay could be placed on top with a waterproofing system. It's not been placed on the structure, but there is also not significant areas of spalling or delamination. Any major concerns that we noticed in the concrete deck surface itself. And then there was signs of minor cracking and kind of general concrete wear on the barrier walls. So There were essentially two options that were reviewed for rehabilitation alternatives. And largely that originated, I'll just give a little bit of background on why we looked at these options. And it's due to the fact that the bearings are in such poor condition. A quick and dirty, I'll call it a quick and dirty, but an easier rehabilitation on a bridge is just limited to concrete patch and repair, fairly easy to manage, lower cost, does extend your service life. But in those, you don't typically see a bearing replacement, because those bearings are what is essentially holding the bridge girders up. So in order to replace those, they have to be temporarily supported on temporary construction jacks. So when you're going to that expense, because it is a big cost to complete that jacking operation in order to get new bearings installed, there are other alternatives that can be reviewed when you've already put that money into those temporary works that you don't really see any benefit out of, aside from the bearing replacement itself. So the first option, option one, we kind of titled it as a minor rehabilitation. So that includes some concrete chipping and patching of the deck and the substructure, which is the abutment walls, the wing walls on the side. And there's also those localized repairs to the barrier walls and the railings. As I mentioned, replacement of the bearings itself, and those expansion joints with new seals. The other recommendation that we did include in this is to go ahead and waterproof and pave the deck. It's a good opportunity to do that when the expansion joints are being replaced, because it can provide a smooth transition for the driving surface, and also seals that concrete to prevent any future salts or contaminants from further entering into the concrete. Chlorides tend to drift through concrete over time, so that the fact that we haven't seen any large delamination or concrete areas that on that existing exposed deck suggests that it hasn't migrated all the way into the top mat of the rebar, the reinforcing steel yet, which is a good thing. So we're recommending to seal that to slow down any further penetration. So option two is kind of a continuation of option one. So it's doing everything that we had recommended in option one, plus taking advantage of the efforts already undertaken with the jacking of the bridge to replace the bearings. So this option, it includes what's called a semi-integral conversion, which is a fancy word and it's hard to explain, but what it essentially does is it takes that expansion joint, which is at the end of the girders, and puts it further back to the end of the approach slabs. So the benefit of that is it essentially eliminates a significant amount of maintenance on the bridge itself, because the expansion joints do tend to wear and leak over time, and you get leakage coming into those girder ends and also the bearing seats, so the concrete that the bearing is sitting on. And over time, you do tend to see that concrete begin to delaminate and require repair. But with the semi-integral conversion, the bridge deck essentially extends beyond where the girder ends. So that creates a complete barrier. So there is no water getting to those girders at all. But it does require some extensive work to be able to achieve that. So the benefit is that it's much lower maintenance costs in the future. And the con is that it's a longer construction duration and more work to do kind of at this time to be able to achieve that. So it would include new approach slabs, and they're called sleeper slabs. That's just because the expansion now occurs even further beyond. So those are just called sleeper slabs. And replace those expansion joints would move to that location. And again, reconstruction of the deck ends and ballast wall just required to be able to accommodate that conversion. So after reviewing the options, from our professional opinion, recommendation is to essentially address the items that are warranted based on the condition. So there was minimal damage and deterioration that we observed to the substructure. So again, that's everything sort of below the deck, so that the abutment wall, footings, everything was in general okay condition. But the immediate needs of the bridge is to replace the bearings and expansion joint. And as we mentioned, to reduce the maintenance on the deck itself, we recommend doing the asphalt pavement with the waterproofing on the deck. And we also observe some erosion and other issues right at the deck ends. So those can easily be addressed with some concrete curb and gutter to better direct the water off of the structure. The final sort of recommendation would be to replace the guide rail to bring that up to current standard, just to eliminate those end treatments that are now actually considered a hazard themselves. This is the kind of preliminary drawing. It's fairly technical, it does just give a cross section and elevation view of the bridge. But if there's any questions on that, we can get to those after. Another consideration for the rehabilitation work is obviously what are we going to do with traffic while the construction is underway. So the traffic staging for this structure would be to do the work in one lane and have traffic controlled with portable temporary traffic signals in the other lane. So it would be a one lane traffic operation, and then work would occur on the other half of the bridge, essentially doing one half at a time. Since the bearings would require replacement, there would be a full closure that would be required. It would typically span the course of a night. So there would be one night where we would install the temporary jacks to lift the bridge up, remove the bearings, and then there would be another full closure, kind of nighttime closure to lower onto the new bearings. Aside from those 2 nights, everything would be open to traffic through the single lane. So this, not the easiest to see, but does show we would have a 3.5 meters for a driving lane in the stage configuration. We do need to provide room to overlap the staging operations. So there's about 6 inches of overlap included in there. So it's not the widest in terms of getting agricultural equipment through, but I think it's mostly kind of recreational traffic in that area that would be potentially a little bit wider. So 3.5 meters should be okay. Additional items for consideration at this structure is, as we mentioned, the navigable waters. So the boat traffic, it is a non-scheduled waterway, which just changes what the requirements are for signage through Transport Canada. And the boat launch does create a really nice kind of staging area for a contractor. So that would require some discussion of just how much do we want to impact or limit the impacts to that boat launch in terms of keeping it open during construction or providing that area to the contractor to utilize. Something that can be discussed at a later date. Another item was there were numerous bird nests and evidence of bat activity on the structure. So that typically will have an effect on the timing of when construction can take place, but all of which can be managed. So left the fun part for last here. The 2 options do have a fairly significant cost difference. Option 1, which was just replacing the bearings and the expansion joints, waterproofing, and the concrete patch repair is about $582,000, which we used kind of based on current year construction estimates. So obviously that can change over time, compared to option 2, which is the similar rehabilitation plus the semi-integral conversion, which is just a little bit over 1.1 million. So with that, I'll open the floor through Madam Mayor to any questions.
Okay. Duncan.
Thank you for your report. I didn't know bridges cost that much money, so that was a just for my own personal curiosity, what's the capital cost of that bridge? Like if we had to replace that bridge today, what would be the approximate cost of that bridge?
I'm just going to pull this number
Yeah.
sort of out of my head, but I would expect it to be in probably near 2 million to replace it with a similar bridge.
Around 2 million. Okay.
Yeah.
And then how long do we have before the issues you've mentioned become major problems?
That's a challenging question. It was identified in the OSIM to do it, I believe, in the next 3 to 5 years. So that was 2 years ago. We agree with that recommendation, just that the bearings have failed. It's unlikely to lead to a catastrophic failure. But it can lead to further deterioration, which just leads to more further costly repair. And as well with the expansion joints, right now the girder ends likely don't need to be repaired. It's pretty minor spalls, but if the leakage continues, then it can cause kind of more damage that then needs to be addressed during construction.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, Philip.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The one question I had was how long does a project like this normally take? I know
Yeah.
you've provided 2 options, so.
Yeah, so option 2 does take significantly longer. Option 1 is probably about a 4-month construction operation. Just takes time to install, jack the bridge, and concrete we have to let it cure. So it's a slow process, but I would anticipate about 4 months for that. And we're likely into the 6 to 7 months range for the second option.
Okay.
So it'd be anticipated to be done in one construction season.
Okay.
And if I can, just for education, the BCI index, so you said it's 73 point something, I don't have it right in front of me right now. What's the scale that's kind of on?
Yeah, that falls into the category of fair to good. It's open to interpretation, so it's a bit of a tricky question to answer. I think so. The Ministry of Transportation, which I understand is on a much different budget than we are here, but anything below 70, they would identify as putting that structure on their rehabilitation plan for upcoming years. If you get down to 60, it's kind of urgent. 50 is sort of immediate needs. So the rating is high, almost artificially high, I'll say, on this structure because all of the other components are in relatively good condition. And it's just those expansion joints and bearings, those 2 particular items which are scored very low, but doesn't impact overall scoring in the BCI.
But what's the scale? So it goes like to 0, there's no bridge there, to
100, yeah, brand new bridge that just opened.
okay.
Yeah.
And then if I can, Madam Mayor, just one more. Were there other bridges in the municipality on the report that rated higher than this bridge? And you might not know the answer to that. Maybe it's Public Works, but.
Yeah, I don't recall the numbers off the top of my head, but we went through the report with the Public Works group, and this one was one that was identified for rehabilitation. There were others that I think were similar score, but didn't have the particular items that needed repair that we've seen at this bridge. And there were others that were even higher, so in good condition. But that's something that we can come back with.
I don't know that we want to see you again. Nikki.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just have 2 questions. So you said that the price you provided us is based on this year's price. So over the past few years, how much of an increase have you seen? So if we are going to do this next year, we don't want to put 582 or 1.1 million in. We should anticipate putting a larger number in.
Yeah, it's been rather challenging, as I'm sure you guys have all observed in the last few years. We haven't seen the prices come down, nor would I expect that. So I think probably 10% per year type of increases would be wise to budget for, just for material cost increases.
Okay, my second question is, if we were to choose to do option 1, what is the lifespan on it compared to the lifespan on option 2?
So typically structures now, so when that one was built, they're designed for a 75-year lifespan. Now we try to get some of them up to 100 years. That's from the original design. So we're, 40 years into that now. Option 1 repair. I did ask my bridge engineer this, and they hate answering this question because it's a little bit of a crystal ball and you don't know what's going to happen. But in a general sense, option 2 would probably provide nearly twice as much additional life as option 1, just because of the very low maintenance feature that it provides with that semi-integral conversion. So it is a higher cost, but it provides benefit down the road.
Okay, Lynn.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Nikki just asked my question about the lifespan.
I have a question. Is there a third option? Such as do option one this year or next year, and then come back and do what you have to do again and spend 600,000 the second year?
Yeah, that is an option. Wouldn't recommend doing it the second year. I would maybe recommend doing that on the next rehabilitation cycle, so in 10 to 15 years. Because the jacking operation, I think, is about 100 grand on its own, 100 to 150. So it's costs that you don't really see the benefit from because it's a temporary. They lift the bridge up, they set it down, they pull the jacks off. You don't get to keep them. So it's kind of why we would recommend doing it all now, or doing option one, and then the other works could be completed in another 10, 15 years. When some of those other components have more wear, and that is more kind of justified.
So it's pay now or pay later, but $1 million is a huge, huge impact on our budget for one bridge. Okay, lots of good news. We're going into budget talks in a couple of weeks, so this will be back on the table. Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Mark, for the not so good news, but definitely news that we need to have. So I have a motion moved by Lynn and seconded by Duncan that council receive the report from Mark McIntosh from Safe Roads Engineering regarding Henderson Road Bridge for information, and that the report outlined 2 rehabilitation alternatives along with a construction cost estimate. And further, that council consider these options further during the 2024 budget deliberations. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Oh, it's only money, I guess. Eh? All right, now we're moving on to the consent agenda. And I just want to let people know number 4 says District 2 rec, but it's actually District 1 rec. Lynn picked that up for us. So I have a motion moved by Duncan McGregor, seconded by Lynn Clegus. All items, that council consent to the approval of items A through G for information, which are considered routine items. A through G, I don't need to read them all. You've got them all there. Discussion? All those in favor? Carried. All right. Any deferred items?
No, there is not, Madam Mayor.
Okay, staff reports. Our first one is Development Services, the construction report. Andy. Thank you for your patience back there, Andy. Okay, I have a motion moved by Lynn and seconded by Cindy that council receive the October 2023 construction details report as prepared by the chief building official for information. Any discussion? Any questions? Oh, Nikki, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Andy, I just was curious where you were at with getting the applications on your desk cleared off. We're in November, and last we heard it was 60 to 80 applications sitting there.
Through Madam Mayor to Councillor Gowdy, I've still got approximately 20 files that are either missing information or I haven't had time to issue them yet. I had Alan Ravel help me out there last week, so he's offered to give me some more help this week to get things caught up.
Good. Good. Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Susan.
Oh, Susan, go ahead.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Irwin. And just off the top of my head, I would guess that with Kennebec being the highest there, I would say there's probably more seasonal, a lot more waterfront development there, so. But I don't have that number, but I could break it down, but I don't know if.
Would that be something at year end?
Yeah, possibly
you could
year end,
maybe
we could do
do
that.
a yearly?
Yep.
Okay. Good. Philip.
Madam Mayor, I just wanted to ask Andy if it would be possible to kind of track and add to the report going forward the backlog of applications or permits, just so we have an idea how workload is going.
Yep, we can do that.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor of the motion? Carried.
Thank you.
All right, now we have planning fees and we have Sonia Bolton with us by Zoom. Welcome, Sonia.
Madam Mayor, members of council, thank you for letting me join virtually tonight. I was also attending Frontenac Islands Council, so through the magic of Zoom, I've made it from Marysville to Charlotte Lake in record time.
Sonia, could you talk just a little slower? We can't really understand you.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me a bit better now?
Yeah, but not quite. Chris, can we turn down the volume? Okay, we're going to try it again. Could you repeat kind of what you said, but just wait 1 sec. Chris is going to turn you down. Okay, let's try that now.
Okay, how does that sound a bit better?
It does, yes.
Okay, no, I was just saying thank you for letting me join electronically this evening because I was also at Frontenac Islands Council tonight, so I've made record time getting from Marysville to Charlotte Lake.
Well, and that's what Zoom is good for.
Yes.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the motion and then we're going to ask questions about the different fees. So the motion is moved by Lynn and seconded by Cindy. The council received the report entitled Proposed New Bylaw Report to Amend Fees for Planning Applications as prepared by the Manager of Community Planning with the County of Frontenac for information. And further, the council accept the new fees as proposed and consider repealing and replacing the existing tariff of fees for planning applications with the new bylaw and associated schedules included in attachment 1 to this report. And further, that the new tariff of fees take effect on its passing and that the fees outlined in Schedule A to the bylaw in attachment 1 remain in place for the remainder of 2023 and all of 2024 with no indexing of fees to take place until January 1, 2025. Okay. Now, who would like
presentation?
Do you want to do your presentation and then we'll take questions as we go?
If you and council wish, Madam Mayor, I'm happy to do that. It's only about 4 or 5 slides, but I'm just going to try and highlight some of the things that have changed and been done since I originally presented our fee research to you back in April.
Okay, sure. Let's do that.
Okay, now I don't know if Chris wants to share it or if I'm able to share on my end. I'm happy to do either.
I think Chris is working on it here. Okay, we have it up.
Okay, perfect. All right, excellent. So we can just proceed to this from the beginning. Excellent. So next slide. Okay, so again, thank you for having me online with you this evening. I was with you back in April when I first presented some of the research that our team had been doing with respect to fee reviews. I know council members were given an opportunity for about a period of couple of weeks to ask additional questions of staff after the meeting, and we didn't get any further questions outside of what had been asked at that meeting. But just as a bit of background, the purpose for doing this review, and this is a review, I do want to highlight, this is a review that we had undertaken, that we've done on behalf of all of our townships. We also worked with South Frontenac, who've updated theirs. And it's not something that at this point that we have charged any time to the townships for. We've undertaken it as a county initiative because we understand that in addition to trying to find some efficiencies to how we process applications, the other side of the coin is being able to find some additional revenue for you folks as well. So in the case of your planning fees bylaw for Central Frontenac, those fees have not been updated since 2008, so about 15 years. The current fees charged for many of the applications, particularly committee of adjustment applications, do not reflect the current cost of the time that it takes to process and review these applications. Generally, planning applications benefit only one property, and so the cost of processing the application should be done through a user pay system. When the fees are not high enough to reflect the cost of the service, the difference in that cost ends up being paid by the general tax levy. So next slide, please. So I want to talk a little bit about, we looked at the 2022 revenues and the 2023 expenses. And I know that we were asked about cost recovery, and our services are different than, say, a planning consultant because of the type of service agreement that we have between the county and our townships. So we track our full number of hours on each file, but when we assess an annual cost, we actually base it on the average of the last 3 years, which helps sort of minimize any spikes in terms of any large projects we might be working on for you, such as when you had your official plan done by county staff. We spread that out over a number of years so that you're not paying a lot all at once. But so in terms of revenue from 2022, the revenue from planning applications was $36,650. Now, total expenses being billed in 2023 for planning services are just under $129,000. Now, to be clear, that is for both development application review as well as policy work. So, for example, work that we're doing on the Charlotte Lake School site when we were working on the feasibility study for communal services would be included in that cost as well. And it also would have included still some of the time spent on the official plan review because, again, it's over a 3-year average. So there were a total of 1,059 hours of planning work for Central Frontenac in 2022. 72% of those hours were dedicated to development planning, including 378 hours for responding to planning inquiries and pre-application consultation. So if you take the 72% of the 2023 billable rate, you can estimate that the expenses related to the planning applications being charged this year are more in the area of about $92,000. So that's a difference of about $56,000 that is currently being covered by the general tax levy. Next slide, please. So again, as I said, full cost recovery is difficult because we don't bill like a consultant. But one of the things that we spoke about with you when I was there in April, and one of the things that North Frontenac has done is that we are proposing that each type of planning application have a maximum number of hours that a planner would spend on it. And that where you get an application every once in a while that's a little bit more complicated, a little bit trickier, when those applications exceed the maximum number, then the applicant would be required to pay the difference with an hourly rate. So I've listed a few examples here. So a zoning bylaw amendment would include 15 hours of the planner's time, various different times for site plan control, depending on the type of site plan control application. And then for consent, minor variance, and permission, which are the committee of adjustment applications, we've listed a maximum of 10 hours. Now, I will say that the one item that North Frontenac did not include was a maximum number of hours for committee of adjustment applications, but we are proposing it here for you, and we did propose it for North. I'm not sure why they made the change to take it out, but there are sometimes applications that can take a considerable amount of time that we feel if they go above the 10 hours, there should be an hourly rate for that. Next slide, please. So just in terms of the new fee bylaw, so we did make some changes to your draft bylaw to align with some of the fees that were approved in North Frontenac, because we heard from you that they're often your closest comparator in terms of who you look to in terms of what they're doing and what they're charging. So a couple of examples of that would be, I think some of your fees are actually being reduced slightly. So right now you're charging $2,800 for an official plan amendment. So that's going to be $2,000 instead. But in addition to the $2,000 application fee, there's also going to be a $2,000 deposit. And that is usually for the more complicated applications where we require external peer reviewers to review studies. That deposit would be used to pay those sums of money. The zoning bylaw amendment, I think, is going from $2,000 to $1,500. But again, there's a $1,000 deposit on top of that for those external fee reviews. And I believe the other was just, I believe it was a lot addition and easement is increasing from 700 to 750. So not too much there. Your new fee bylaw also includes fees, for example, for services that you don't currently charge any fee for. So those would be things such as minimum distance separation calculations that are required by the province when somebody might be building near a livestock operation, extra public notice circulations for public meetings. So there are some additional services there you're not currently charging for that we are proposing that you should charge for. Another is for some applications where building has occurred without a permit. So specifically, if somebody comes in and they need a rezoning or a minor variance or permission because they've built a structure without a building permit, we are suggesting that those fees should increase from what's proposed by about $500. Now, it's important to note here, this is not a penalty. You cannot use the application fee process to administer a penalty. That has to go through the bylaw enforcement process, but you can charge a higher fee when there is more work involved with a file. And when development has happened without permission, there is more work for staff in terms of extra site visits, extra meetings with the applicants and other agencies, digging through air photos and old files to try and find that baseline, because what happens is we have to figure out what was there before it was built, because we have to assess it as though it wasn't built. So we have to be able to sort of work back and find that baseline. The other is the draft fees do take into consideration, oh, my apologies, I skipped one, a couple important ones. So pre-application, is something else that we are suggesting that you charge for right now. Right now, pre-application consultation is required by the province. It is a very important process because it lets the applicant know exactly what they need to do to be successful and to submit a complete application, and is really, setting them up for success. But right now, it's a very expensive free service. So last year, we spent 378 hours doing pre-application consultation and responding to planning inquiries. And right now, none of those costs are being covered. So we're proposing a fee of $100 for committee of adjustment applications and $300 for all other types of planning applications. One other fee that we are proposing that both North and South have put in place is for zoning compliance for building permit applications. So both North and South this year have moved the review of zoning compliance for building permit applications from their building inspectors to their planning administration team. And they are charging an extra fee for that up front. So that does two things, actually. First of all, what it does is it makes sure that the zoning review is done correctly and there's no misinterpretations or misunderstandings as to what is permitted and what the setbacks and everything are. The second thing that it does is it takes the pressure off of the building inspectors, because they have very tight timelines for when they are supposed to receive and either deem an application complete or incomplete and then issue the permit. So by taking the zoning compliance piece and putting that up front and making it separate, then that's taking a bit of pressure off of the building inspectors for that. What I wanted to say about the draft fees and delegated authority is we are going to be bringing you a report in the very near future about putting in place a process for delegated authority to township staff for undisputed consents. And so we have taken that into consideration as part of doing these fees. And we actually need the new fee bylaw in order to do that process, because there is now going to be a separate fee if somebody applies for a consent and it is disputed and has to be elevated to the committee, there needs to be a recirculation of a notice, and there will be a fee associated with that. And then finally, we are proposing that you index your fees, which means that you would do an incremental, and the treasurer could explain this better than I can, but it would be an incremental increase annually of a small percentage to ensure that you're keeping up with sort of the cost of inflation and everything. You should still review your fees on a regular basis. But by doing these incremental annual increases, you're not left with these big gaps and these big jumps in prices each time you do a full review. So that's a bit of a highlight. I do also have a copy of sort of our research chart and everything. So I am happy to take questions and maybe dive a bit deeper into specific fees if there are questions.
Okay, thank you, Sonia. I'm sure folks will have specific, Philip, you have a specific question.
Yeah, just the indexing of fees. Is that something that we can not include if we so choose? Just because I do prefer to see all those increases come to council instead of just annually it getting increased just based on some information. I mean, it's normally cost price index, but
yeah,
I would prefer council having that decision.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, and the you know, your clerk or the treasurer can correct me if I'm wrong, but generally what happens in other municipalities with the indexing of fees is it is based on the third quarter consumer price index. So that would be end of September plus a certain percentage. And then staff would prepare a report that would be presented in, say, November or December of the year to say, okay, as of January 1st, based on this index, this is the new list of fees for the next year. So it still needs to be approved by council. It's not automatic, but it is automatic that each year staff would present that increase, that incremental increase to you for you to approve. And what we're saying for this version, because we're presenting this so late in 2023, is that you don't start that indexing of fees until, well, it would be presented to you in about a year's time, and it would take effect January 1st, 2025.
So I think what you're saying, Councillor Smith, or Deputy Mayor Smith, is that it needs to come back to council before the indexing just automatically happens.
Correct.
So we can put that in our bylaw that it will be indexed at council's discretion yearly, or
we can recommend that that's what whatever Michael would suggest that we use, the treasurer would suggest we use, but it would still come to council for the final okay.
Yeah. So we can add that in the bylaw if it's not there
Well,
already.
I think it pretty well it speaks to it in here is this, that there will be no indexing until January the 1st of 2025, but we will come to council in 2024 to make that presentation, and it won't come in effect until we, if council so wishes. Yes. Yeah. Yes, they were. They're like the cemeteries and things. Yes, you're correct.
That's fair. Okay. Other questions or comments? All right. Seeing none.
Oh, Andy.
Oh, sorry, Andy. Come on over.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'd just like to add that the Development Services Assistant spends approximately 75% of her time on planning related committee of adjustment, that type of thing. So that cost is also not reflected in Sonia's presentation there.
So you're in agreement that we're not charging enough money for the stuff that we do?
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. I think we all know that. And the old saying is that development should pay for development and not on the taxpayer.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I will agree with Andy there that, you know, a lot of our research in terms of the numbers that I presented to you are a direct reflection of the service agreement we have for our planning services. Yeah. But yes, when we were doing the fee research, we were trying to keep in mind that it's not just the fee and the amount of money that we charge for our planning services, but you as a township have your own costs for your own staff who have to receive and review these applications, communicate with applicants, place things on agendas, and all of the overhead that goes with your township office. So we were cognizant of all of those in terms of proposing the fees that we have this evening.
Right. Okay. All right. If there's no more questions or comments, all those in favor of the motion? Carried. Thank you very much, Sonia.
You're very welcome. Thank you and have a good evening.
Drive safely, okay?
I will do.
Okay. All right. Now we are at
Jen's present if need be.
Development Services with Titchburn Rink zoning. So we have a motion moved by Lynn and seconded by Cindy. Whereas the township initiated zoning bylaw amendment file number ZB 03-23 Titchburn Rink for the parcel of land known as part of lot 25 concession 1 being part 1 on 13R 22-984 geographic township of Hinchinbrook, 11-624 road 38 be approved by council. And further, that zoning bylaw number 2011-52 of the Township of Central Frontenac as amended be further amended as per attachment 2 draft bylaw and schedule A to amend zoning bylaw number 2011-52 included with this report. And further, that council determines that in accordance with section 3417 of the Planning Act, no further notice is required prior to the passage of the bylaw. And now therefore be it resolved that council consider the enactment of said bylaw later in the meeting. Discussion. This is the rink property up here.
And there's no comments.
And there's been no comments from the public. Okay, all those in favor of the motion? Carried. Right. Now we are at roads.
And Steve Keeley is online.
Okay, all right.
And Steve and Noah are here.
And we have Steve and Noah with us that I'm sure can answer all the questions. All right, we have a motion moved by Lynn and seconded by Cindy. The council received the Public Works Activity Report as prepared from the Acting Public Works Manager dated November the 14th, 2023 for information. Any discussion or questions on that report? Philip.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just had one question about the first snowfall we had and what appears on Road 38, the sealant was getting ripped up and whether that's a concern or not.
Steve or Noah, do you want to come up to the microphone? Or do you want Steve Keeley to answer that?
And Steve's there. You can see us.
Just,
I turned on.
there we go.
To you, Madam Mayor, Councillor Smith.
Just pull it up closer to you, Steve.
Yeah, we did notice some of it was peeling up in the first storm, so we'll have to have a look at it. I don't know if it was not properly done right or whatever, but we're gonna have a look at it. We noticed it. Yeah, that's the first storm. Foreman actually brought it to our attention, so.
Okay. Anything else on the activity report? Lynn? And then Duncan.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I have two items. Both are on outdoor facilities. First, it talks about the Arden Ball Diamond being regraded, leveled, rolled, and new topsoil being placed. When is that scheduled to be completed? And second, with the maintenance contracts, I believe that the picnic tables were to be collected and put away, and I haven't noticed that being done yet. When is that going to be completed?
Okay, who would like to take that one? Push that, there we go.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Clagus. If the picnic tables have not been picked up, that'll be something I can relay to the contractor and get that done right away, because that was part of the maintenance contract. So that should be done right away. And what was your other question about the topsoiling of the?
In the report, the outfield at the Arden Ball Diamond is being regraded, leveled, rolled, and new topsoil is to be placed. When is that getting done?
Or has it been done?
So last I spoke with the contractor, he was getting everything finalized last week. So that is going to have to be done before the end of the month.
And freeze up. Okay. No, Duncan.
Through you, Madam Mayor, will we have a copy of the roads needs study in time for budget?
That might be a Steve Keeley question. Mr. Steve Keeley, are you with us?
I'm with you.
Would you like to take that question about the roads.
I wouldn't see why not. The road need study, I'll just spend a minute on it, is an inventory approach to the roads. And so Noah could answer this as well as I could. Noah's had to redirect them several times to get what we expected and what they said they would do. So just need some patience from council. I think they did an okay job. They just didn't quite cover all of the things that they said they would do. So it's been back and forth with them a few times. I think we're getting closer to what we need. And I would say it's going to be there before council has to look at budget.
Okay, so that's in 2 weeks, right?
Yeah.
So no, keep after them. Good. Okay, Nikki?
Oh, sorry, just a follow up to that.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, even if I know it's kind of dangerous to give council a draft copy, but even if we could have something by budget, it would be helpful.
Okay, Nikki,
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just this question is for Steve Gould, I think.
pull that mic down closer for you.
Okay, sorry. In here, in your report on page 2, it says the new AVL provider hardware has been installed on most public works vehicles. Which ones have been missed and when will they be getting done?
To you, Madam Mayor, Councilor Gowdy. There's only a few pickups and 2 of them are the last 2 pickups we got. So it's just I think Tyson's old truck. And the 2 new pickups, there's just a few pickups, I think. And we hopefully going to get a new tandem. So that'll be another one. Most all the big trucks and all the graders have it right now.
So it's kind of just, let's wait till all the vehicles come in and do that whole batch at once, which makes sense. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, no other questions or comments? All those in favor of the motion? Carried. Okay, and next is motion moved by Lind and seconded by Cindy that council receive the report regarding speed zones within the township as prepared by the acting public works manager for information. And further, the council approves the recommendation of the acting public works manager to rescind bylaw 2020-43 and return to statutory speeds as defined by section 128(1) of the Highway Traffic Act. And further, that the bylaw be brought back to the November 28th, 2023 meeting for enactment. Steve Keeley, would you like to speak to this?
Certainly. I think is it 2020-43 is the bylaw that tried to lower speeds, and the speeds were lowered certainly according to section 128, 2 and 3. And, council can certainly do that. And I just want to add that 150 roads were named at 40 kph, 30 were named at 50 and only 9 at 60. Whereas Road 38 was left at 80 kilometers an hour. It seems like potentially a good idea. It was done for maintenance, from what I understand, and I want to thank Councillor Everett for bringing this to my attention as well. We started looking at this, and I say we, Councillor Everett and I started looking at this as some of the intersections are signed improperly. They're difficult to sign because they're Y intersections and so on. And then we determined that there was a bylaw in place to reduce speed. It's all well and good, except the same Highway Traffic Act says, and I don't know the number exactly in front of me, that if you reduce from statutory speeds, you also have to sign every few hundred meters. And in this case, you have to sign every 600 meters. And it doesn't seem like much until you start looking at the number of roads. It was in the road needs study that we looked at the number of roads. They're signed at the beginning and the end. Sorry, only at the beginning and not every 600 meters. So if you're having trouble snoozing away tonight, you can look at the tail end of this report that talks about what's in the Highway Traffic Act. It's arduous to look at, but I would recommend that you consider rescinding this bylaw and going back to statutory speeds. This does not change the bylaws that are in place for, say, Arden and or Godfrey and Charbot Lake and so on, but it does go back to statutory speeds on the rest of the roads that don't have their own bylaws. Any questions?
Would it change the one
What?
at Godfrey on 38 Highway?
No, what we're
No.
trying to do is make sure the clerk's department cleaned up my report considerably. So it reads reads quite well to the front. It's leave Godfrey in place. The Charbet Lake speed reductions like through the school zone and so on are all fine. But we want to leave those in place. I think I mentioned Arden, Godfrey, there's probably one in Mountain Grove that's a reduction as well. Those bylaws are in place. If they happen to name 2020-43, then we will take them out and bring them back properly named without looking at that bylaw. So the reason I'm bringing this to your attention is because to actually enforce the speeds, you need to sign the rest of the road. And I would say, not say, I've calculated that it's going to be like a huge amount of money, $250,000 to just do the hardtop roads, and probably more because we have many, many more gravel roads. There's loose top roads as well. So brought it to your attention. I would recommend rescinding the bylaw, but it's entirely up to council.
Okay. Nikki.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for your report. It's very informative. My only question was, we rescinded some of those speeds due to the maintenance levels, and we can't meet the maintenance levels. So what's the money you've given us the money aspect of signage, but not by not meeting minimum standards on those roads that we had to reduce the speed for. What's the money attached to that to make us be able to meet those standards?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. I think it was brought to my attention by Councillor Everett that it was done to reduce, in quotations, reduce the maintenance on the roads. But if you look at the minimum maintenance standards, what it means is that you can let the potholes grow bigger and you don't have to go out as fast. But really and truly, it only drops us down one section. I really don't think it's going to make any change to when the plows go out and or when we're fixing potholes and washouts. It's a tough call because you need to go to the minimum maintenance standards, look at the speed versus activity matrix, and we move one section over by going from 80 to 40 in some roads. So I think it was well meant. I'm not sure it was executed perhaps the way it should have been.
And as far as I remember, we're meeting our minimum maintenance standard and in most cases exceeding it. So I think maybe this was maybe put together for the wrong reasons. So, Duncan.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Steve Keeley, you've done an excellent job on the report to outline exactly why this is required. The only thing I would ask council to consider is I think we should probably defer this until we're able to consult with our new public works manager when they're hired. It's too big a decision to make with only what information we have here. Our previous public works manager made his decision for one reason. Steve Keeley's made it for another. And I think the public works manager that has to live with the decision should be consulted.
Bill?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to point out the one thing, though, that without those speed limit signs, those bylaws don't exist anyway. So
they're not enforceable.
Yeah.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Everett. I'm not so worried about like a $250 speeding ticket as if we change our maintenance standards and it ends up costing us $500,000 or $200,000, and we don't have the information here. I don't think to make that educated decision.
We're not changing our maintenance standard. The maintenance standard that we have been using is the one we continue to use. This bylaw was put in place. I guess if we were to drop our maintenance standard, but I don't believe that ever happened. So this was done in error, and unless we're prepared to put proper signage out, this bylaw is not enforceable and therefore is no sense having it on the books. So I would suggest that we go ahead and pass this to clean it up. Steve Keeley has a lot of years of experience that a new road superintendent, public works manager may have to take some time to investigate this to come to the same conclusion. The act is the act. And I think this interpretation is the real legitimate interpretation. And Bill did mention this a long time ago. Lynn.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. You did mention the exceptions in Godfrey, Arden, and Charlotte Lake. If you rescind this and then do something to keep those, will they be enforceable?
Through
Steve?
you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Clegis, it is enforceable as long as they're properly signed.
And they do have more signage because they're in hamlets, is that right?
Yeah, hamlets are tricky. And of course, when you're reading this tonight to fall asleep, if the hamlet is more than 1,500 meters long, you can sign it every 900 meters. If the roads in it are less than 1,500 meters, you have to sign it every 300 meters. So there's a bit of measuring that needs to go on to get this right. I drive through Godfrey every morning, and yes, I do slow down a bit there, and that's a properly signed area where there's a head. Yes, the sign is there and all that good stuff. I think Mr. Everett or Councillor Everett has brought to my attention that Charlotte Lake may need a bit of a tune-up here and there, but those hamlets need to be signed properly. And to answer, I'm not sure I'm answering your question. I'm not sure they're perfectly signed right now.
So that is something we'll have to look at. That wouldn't be as costly as 300 signs. Philip.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As Councillor McGregor pointed out, it's not so much about the enforcement of fines. It's more about what liability does municipality have, because technically you can drive 80 kilometers an hour down the Oak Flats Road. I wouldn't suggest anybody actually do that. They probably wouldn't be on it for very long. Because our bylaw would state that it's less than 80, does that help us in any factor?
Steve, can you answer that?
Probably the man sitting behind the microphone can answer that better than I can. Thank you.
Bill?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. No, saying they have to be specifically posted if they're bylawed to the statutory speed limits. They do not have to be posted because we only have 2 statutory speed limits.
So then back to the liability. Do we have any liability for saying it's 80 going down a road that you really should only be doing 40?
No, where we do have the liability is maintaining a road posted improperly at 40 when legally it's 80. So we have to maintain a road at 80 if it's improperly posted. If we don't, then our liability goes up.
Signs are going to be cheap.
Okay. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, we will be bringing the rules back another day after we look at budget dollars for signs. All right. Steve, did you have something?
He's got
No? Report. Okay, we have another one here. This is preservation techniques. This is moved by Lynn and seconded by Cindy. The council received the asset preservation A 2024 budget preview report as prepared by the acting public works manager for information, and further that council consider the following recommendations during the budget deliberations. 1, recently constructed roads should be sealed to prevent water migration and subsequent damage to prolong their life and reduce costs to the municipality. Number 2, newly constructed surface treated roads should be at least 7 meters wide wherever possible to reduce edge cracking and fog sealed to stabilize the float and promote proper drainage. Number 3, high traffic arteries like Road 38 should be preserved as the cost of reconstruction is prohibitive. Number 4, real attention must be paid to compaction of waste sites and material entering the landfill to prolong their usable life and use to the community. Discussion. Duncan.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to one of the members of staff. When you look at the waste fill sites and you talk about compaction, is there a process or a contractor that would come in, scoop our dumps out and sort out the recyclables so they could be properly recycled? Because we all know our dumps are partially full with those, just to extend the life of our landfills.
I guess the other question is that something MOE would allow. Steve Keeley, do you know the answer?
Yeah, I can speak to that, Madam Mayor. I'm not sure there is an answer, but I can speak to it. Councillor, I've recently, after going to the landfill site in Oso, thought there seemed to be more space than another couple of years. So I've gotten back in touch with Stephanie Reeder to see whether we can recompact the landfill site or not. And just to speak to that a little bit, recompacting a landfill site has several advantages because of the weekly or bi-weekly cover you have. You get to recover all of that, compact the garbage per se, and then cover it only over once again and not every week. So you have this layer after layer of sand that you've got in there that you retrieve. Stephanie also spoke to the fact that there's going to be recyclables in there, and that does create a cost, just as you've alluded to taking those recyclables, setting them aside as opposed to the rest of the landfill and the garbage. Right now we're about to get, and I don't recall the name of it, but it's a survey of the landfill site that indicates, imagine you looking at a pyramid almost. It indicates how much room is left in the site. And after that happens, we have the opportunity to make a decision and find out the cost of recompacting that landfill site. So very good. And we may find that there's more room in that particular landfill site than the other ones. So that's the recompacting. There is issues about trying to recover the recyclables for sure. But it's done. Contractors do it. It might be expensive, and I don't have a number for you right now as to how expensive it is I know how much it costs to close a landfill site. I don't know the impact on the community of now having to truck all of that stuff to God knows where. I don't know, somewhere in the US or maybe to the incinerator in Ottawa. I don't know the cost of that yet, but it's something that is out there. And I think that Stephanie Reeder and Cambrian will know that. The other aspect is that I've learned in a very short time that we actually landfill uncompacted garbage. We have a compactor, but some of the garbage that goes in, let's call it waste. Some of the waste that goes into the landfill in Oso is not compacted. So I was a bit taken back by that. Also, I believe the waste that goes into the Olden site, which has 27 years in theory remaining to it, is not compacted. It used to be. We used to rent, when I say we, Central Frontenac used to rent a compactor, maybe from Wib Crane, but it's difficult. They're extremely heavy beasts of things to throw onto a float, bring over. They usually destroy the float. You bring it over and you compact the thing, and then you go away. Compacting on site is what I put in place in Tay Valley Township, and the landfill site looks like a park by comparison to other landfill sites. So there's an opportunity to really take care and manage our sites. I don't think we're doing it right now because you can't find a person with a compactor right now, but you can buy them, and you can buy them used. So it's a consideration I'd like council to think about. Councillor Smith is right. A lot of this stuff is about making sure your liabilities, that's what Public Works does, in decrease liability. But you also, the other aspect of it is to take care of the assets and the infrastructure. And one of the most important assets you have right now is a landfill site, actually two. And that needs to be seriously taken care of, I believe. that's a long-winded answer to a very good question.
Well, and as the motion says, we're going to discuss that again in the budget deliberations for sure. Okay. Anything else on this motion? All those in favor? Carried.
Thank you.
Okay, Public Works is done. We have emergency services, and then I think we need at least a 5-minute break. The water's going in really well. All right, we have a motion moved by Philip Smith, seconded by Nikki Gowdy. What's that?
I mean, you have the plan anyway, that's just.
Okay, so whereas the municipality is required to have an emergency response plan in place, and that the current plan was last revised in 2020, and further that council accept the amended plan as recommended by the manager of emergency services fire chief. Now therefore be it resolved that council pass bylaw 2023-58 later in the meeting to adopt the new plan. That was the presentation we had earlier. All those in favor? Oh, questions? Yeah.
Sorry, I was hoping the chief would stay. Do we know how much that plan cost the township?
I don't know.
I don't, Michael would know, but he's
Okay.
not here.
All right, and then the second thing, the plan was not initially included in the council package. I caught it today. I didn't have time to read the whole thing till about 30 minutes before the meeting, and we're still missing in our council package a bunch of the appendixes that talk about like the emergency, the secondary buildings, so on and so forth. And I'm just worried there might be financial implications in this plan we don't see, that we should have before we make this decision.
We will talk about that again at budget time, but the appendix is the phone numbers, is it not? The annex, I think is what you mean.
Yeah,
Talk
so like
about the
when you
annex.
talk about what is going to be our second EOC building, if we say in our plan that that's going to be the municipal office, we don't know the financial implications of that. So how can we agree to that plan if we don't know the?
Well, that the generator would be the issue with both buildings.
Both buildings, as far as I know, that's the only cost that I'm aware of.
But what I guess what I'm saying is, can you look into? We have not looked yet into like using another fire hall for our second building, right?
No.
And so maybe we should look into that before we agree to a plan that might cost the township a whole bunch of money. The plan's excellent.
Yeah.
I'm just saying it's just not quite there yet.
But the plan itself, if there's alterations to buildings, would be budget deliberations. Doesn't have to stop the plan from happening. It's ongoing budget implications. And will be decisions made. Right now, there's the fire hall and the office that can change if council decides it needs to change.
But sorry to rephrase this question. If we agree to a plan that says that we will do the following things because the secondary EOC building is going to be the municipal office, and in the plan it says that we will have an emergency generator there. We have a shower. We will have no choice at budget but to do those things because they're in this plan that we have not seen completely.
We have that now. We have to have an emergency plan now, which we've had before. And that's the same as what we've had before. All we're changing is what we're calling it and the process. The last emergency we had, the EOC was the fire hall. It's always been the township office as a secondary. So that's not new. That's been forever.
Change in the system, the IMS system.
Yeah, the system of how we deal with the emergency in this.
I'm just saying that we have in this plan, it talks about all these other documents that are supposed to go with it. And they're not there. That's all I was saying. We don't know what it's going to cost or what's involved. It could say you have to wear purple sweaters if you're part of the committee. We don't know that because it's not in the plan. That's a last comment on it.
Okay. Nikki?
So I think it's a great plan too, and I have no problem supporting it, but I'm with Councillor McGregor. I don't want to be tied to a financial commitment that we have to do because of this plan. Because we've got to be frugal this year. Like, you and I know personally, more and more people are using the food bank, and we have to live within our means as well. And there's a generator at every fire hall right now that's usable and suitable. So buying $120,000 $220,000 generators, it's $500,000 almost. I don't want to be tied to that. So I see what he's saying. I think the plan's good, but I want to guarantee as well that we're not tied to having forced to have to do this.
What was presented were recommendations that will be dealt with at budget time. And the generators came up last time. They will come up again when we do budget. So passing this plan does not commit you to doing anything if you don't budget the dollars for it.
Can I mention? And when you're talking about the generator, we already have a generator that can hook up to the township office. Public Works has it on the tractor and then they just bring it to the office. That's what we did during the system when during the ice storm. And that's what they do. They bring that the tractor can bring that. So it's not like you have to buy another generator necessarily for the office.
For the secondary.
For the secondary one, right? So there is no financial implication there.
Yeah. And there was nothing presented tonight that says you have to spend any money. It says, here's your recommendations. If you choose not to follow those recommendations, then so be it. And we're going to have 2 days of budgets. We'll be throwing out lots of stuff. Okay. All right. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Not going to be an easy budget. Never is. All right, let's have a 5-minute break, maybe 10, and then we'll come back and finish off our committees and bylaws.
And we have
Closed session after that.
Yeah.
Give these guys an opportunity to go home.
Yes, that's right. They can go home.
This annex is not information. This is what the people, right? That's not like if people still know. So we're not making everything up. So the conversation is done by
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
No, because this annex is not public information. This is for the EOC. That was because it has everybody, it's got people's names and it's got phone numbers. It's all, it's got phone numbers. The annex has never heard of, they were always with.
No, I mean, obviously, we're gonna have to go back and probably. And we can put all of us. And then. Oh, yeah.
This, my sweater, I think it's good. What time it is? I know we're gonna be a little wild. Yeah.
It's the closest 20.
Oh, never got, Steve wants that. Oh, yeah, he might have this box with a thing. I'll ask him. That's okay.
Oh. Okay, folks, can we come back as soon as we can? Okay, folks, we're going to go back now. Okay, we are at the Kennebec Lake Association. I have a motion moved by Nikki Gowdy, seconded by Philip Smith, whereas Gray and Aileen Miriam have been providing advice and support for over 30 years to Kennebec Lake Association and to the citizens of Central Frontenac. And whereas the Kennebec Lake Association is requesting permission from council to install a plaque on a bench or rock on municipal property at the Kennebec boat ramp. Now, therefore, be it resolved that council grant permission for the Kennebec Lake Association to install a plaque as requested for the purpose of recognizing Gray and Aileen Merriman. Discussion. Lynn.
I just want to strongly support this. The Merriams have been very instrumental in bringing a lot of projects forward in this area, and it's great that we can recognize them.
Yes. Gray is also one of those people you can call and ask for advice on different species and why the water is low or high, and he's full of great information and always willing to contribute. So by all means, I certainly would support it. Okay, all those in favor? Carried unanimously. That's great to do something for someone who is so low key in the community and is there for everything. All right, now we are at bylaws. Communications, we had those. So moved by Philip, seconded by Nikki. That bylaw 2023-58 being a bylaw to establish an emergency management program and emergency response plan be read a first, second, and third time, and finally pass this 14th day of November 2023. Discussion, all those in favor? Carried. Moved by Nikki, seconded by Philip. Sorry, there's just so much of a title. I'm never sure what to read first. That bylaw 2023-59 being a bylaw to prescribe a tariff of fees for the processing of applications made in respect to planning matters, and to repeal bylaw number 2008-255 be read a first, second, and third time, and finally pass this 14th day of November 2023. All those in favor? Carried. Moved by Bill and seconded by Dan, that bylaw 2023 being a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw number 2011-52 as amended, zone change from general residential R1 zone to site-specific open space OSX2, part of lot 25 concession 1, geographic township of Hinchinbrook, municipally known as 11-624 Road 38, Township of Central Frontenac be read a first, second, and third time, and finally pass this 14th day of November 2023. It's the rink. All those in favor? Carried. The address is
11624 Road 38.
11624.
It's the house, because the house is, it's the that
House
owns
is
the property.
Municipally known as. Is there a 911 address?
We will have to get one. Yes,
Okay.
right. Mhm.
So for now, it's on the whole property until we get a new. So,
Yes, that's right. Until they'll have to get that done there.
okay. Well, it's been open for years.
The deed hasn't been.
But this
finalized
is
yet.
the first year we've owned it. And if there was to be an accident on it while somebody's skating, we need a 911 address to send it to.
But Okay, so but for now, this is the information we have to do the bylaw, and then we'll get a 911 address. Okay, all those in favor? Carried. Believe you me, the ambulance guys know where the rink is. Okay, now, is there any notice of motions?
No, there is not.
Any giving of notice of motions?
No, there is not.
New or other business?
No, Madam Mayor.
Okay. I have something that it's more of an update. We have been involved with the Trails Committee, Nikki and I. There have been 2 bridges that have been condemned on the west line from Charlotte Lake. So it was closed for snowmobilers. The bridges needed to be repaired. EOTA had already had them on their list of bridges to be repaired. They have had them costed out. We talked to Cindy at EOTA, and they could do the bridges if we could come up with $25,000, which is 27% of the cost for those bridges. So the committee so far has been able to raise $20,000. There could be a shortfall of roughly 5,200, maybe under 5,000. I spoke to Michael and he assured me that there was enough in the budget that we could cover that if we needed to. So it is an emergency to get these done. So we have asked them to proceed. And what we can do is if council feels when we get to budget time that 5,000 cannot be absorbed into this year, then next year we would not ask council to put 5,000 in the budget, which we typically use for gravel and grading. But we have been able to raise 20,000 of the 25,000. So just to let you know, and we'll talk about it again at budget time. Okay, so yes, Nikki.
As of today, the repairs have been done and the trail is back open to 4-wheelers and cyclists and any multi-use on it.
Yes, the joys of bridges. If we don't have them screwing up on our roads, they're messing up on our trails. They're an expensive lot. All right. I have a motion moved by Bill and seconded by Dan that council move into closed session pursuant to section 239(2) of the Municipal Act to discuss 1, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, 239(2)B, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, section 239(2)B. 3, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, sections 239(2)B. 4, labor relations or employee negotiations, section 239(2)D. And 5, a position plan, procedure, criteria, or instructions to be applied to any negotiations on or to be carried on by or behalf of the municipality or local board, sections 239(2)K. Oh, all those in favor? Carried. All right.